Has this ever happened to you before? You're hanging out at your house, and maybe your significant other has over some couples, and they're chatting in the kitchen or so. You're hanging out with some of the husbands and boyfriends, whatever, and you're trying to make a casual conversation. Hey, thanks for coming by. I appreciate it.
No problem.
You into cars at all?
Not really much of a car guy. How about football?
Nah, I've never really been much of a sports guy. I mean, I watch the Patriots play, but that's about it. How about movies? I see you got the Iron Man shirt.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of the Marvel stuff for a while.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of the Marvel stuff for a while as well. Can I get you a beer or a whiskey or something?
I don't really drink whiskey all that often.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I've got some really good whiskeys. Do you want to, try some out?
Sure. Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. Cool. Let's do it.
Nice. Awesome.
Perfect example of how you can totally segue into starting to have somebody else help you explore some of your whiskeys. It's always a real fun thing to introduce somebody to something that they've rarely tried. They might even have some good ideas of things that they have tried before that they do like, or things that they don't like. You should listen intently to that stuff because it's going to help you in this next little section. Now that you have everybody at your bar, there's something that you probably should have known ahead of time, and that's know your stock. I don't just mean that you have, one bottle of Old Pulteney and one bottle of Knob Creek. I more mean, what do you know about your whiskey? So if I pick a bottle here, if I just right in the center, if I grab this Jefferson's Ocean, I can speak for a couple minutes about this. I can say, oh, Jefferson's Ocean, this is a cool bottle because it goes on these ships in these, barrels. Barrels are sloshing around. It's giving a little extra character to the whiskey. It goes all around the world, has to hit these specific ports. This is voyage number 13, and I believe they're up to about 20 or so at this point. Just, rattle off something off the top of your head. It doesn't have to be super deep. You don't have to say, oh, Jefferson's Ocean was created in 1924 by blah, blah, blah. Like, nobody really cares about that except for you guys during my normal reviews, but we're a different kind of person. You're talking to casual whiskey drinkers. So know a little something about your whiskey. Build that excitement while you're pouring it for people and get them really kind of like into the whole hobby of knowing about what you're about to drink. All right, so know your stock. Next, get a feel for the people that you're pouring for. While you're talking to them, say, so what do you typically drink? They might say, oh, I usually drink Knob Creek, and I really like Knob Creek. It's woody and oaky and great. And you might say to yourself, okay, cool. Maybe I have some Woodford Double Oak on hand. This person obviously likes an oaky whiskey, so let's go for that. So you might also want to ask them, hey, I know you really like an oaky, woody, kind of bourbon, but do you want to try something totally different? There's a good chance that they'll say yes, but if they say no, now you can target woody bourbons. Or you can maybe go a little bit, maybe give them like a wheated bourbon. Give them something slightly different, but still a bourbon. If they say yes, then give them something crazy. Go over for the Berclotti or something like that. I wouldn't quite go for Isla for anybody right away. That's kind of a end of the night thing. Not only because you're going to fry their palate, but also just you don't want to turn them off of whiskey. All right, so get a feel for your people, right? Next, you want to kind of know some stories. Have something on hand about why you're into whiskey, because you're probably going to get that question. People will say like, hey, what got you into whiskey? You clearly have a lot of bottles. And for me, I could tell a story you've all heard a few times. Go watch some of my live streams if you're curious. I don't want to fill this video up with that story, but we all have stories as to why we got into whiskey. Or if you don't, maybe you have a cool story about, maybe you went to the Bastard's Ball a few weeks ago. Maybe you went to a really cool whiskey tasting and it just kind of really got you into it because the person given the tasting was really knowledgeable and you respected that. You could have 100 different stories. It's really just casual conversation because everybody's just kind of standing there with a glass, staring at each other, smelling and sipping. You want to have something, you're the host. You should have a good story. Now that being said, be a good host and remember that a good host listens more than they talk. Of course, if you are entertaining with a story, that's a little different. But, don't hog the conversation. And that brings us to our next point. Be humble. This is very important. You probably are the smartest guy in the room when it comes to whiskey. There's a very good chance, but remember that you might not be. Somebody that you've never met before might know way more about whiskey than you and is just along for the ride. They might call you out on your BS. But more importantly, it's always good to be humble. Don't be the guy who's like, oh, you like Knob Creek? Ugh, Why? What a low whiskey. Why would you even try that? Like that's stupid. Don't be that guy. All right. So let's talk about once you started pouring. You've got this group of people. Let's say you got 5 people and you're just entertaining this whole group. 2 things can happen. Either they'll all want to try the same thing at once, or you'll want to pour something individual for each one, or maybe like 3 of them want something. I guess a few things could happen. 3 of them could want one thing and 2 of them could want something else. Either way, tailor your conversation to your scenario, but let's just go easy. Let's say that you've poured the same thing for everybody. Now, I'm going to say, let's pour that Jefferson's Ocean, right? So I take a nose of this, and I smell it, and I tell them, I say, okay, do you guys detect anything? And just wait for a sec. Maybe there'll be somebody in the crowd who's a little bit more outgoing. They'll just yell it out, be like, cookies, like maybe, who knows? I don't really remember much about the Jefferson's Ocean. However, if not, then offer something. Give it easy, something that you know that they'll get. Say, anybody, did you guys get any specific smell out of there? Well, I can tell you, I personally get caramel when I smell this. Around the room, all of a sudden you got, oh yeah, no, I totally get caramel. That's great. And like oak or vanilla, like they're going to question themselves and just be reassuring. It doesn't matter what they say. If they're, kind of smells like a fruitcake. Be like, absolutely, why not? Like it can totally smell like a fruitcake. This is their palate. This is their nose. They're able to get whatever they want. You guys know the drill. We all have smelled questionable things in our whiskey, and maybe we've gone back to it, reaffirmed the fact that, yes, in fact, we really do smell leather. Like that's a weird one when you first smell leather in a whiskey because it doesn't make any sense, but it totally does. And, that guy could totally smell anything. So be simple, I guess is what I'm getting at. Simple nose, something that they can definitely get. All right, so now you moved along to the drinking, right? You've all had maybe 1, 2, 5, and you're having a good time. Get people bottles of water. Don't make it a question. Don't say, hey, would anybody like some water? Say, hey, I'll be right back. Just come back with a bottle of water for everybody. Just hand it right to them. People aren't going to ask necessarily for water, either because they're having too much fun. They don't want to look like a wuss. They don't want to, any number of reasons. Just don't make it a choice. Give them a bottle of water. Keep everybody sober. Make it fun, not drunk, right? Okay, next, a couple of things. After a little bit of time, you're going to get a good feel for what people do and don't like. And they'll probably say, all right, can you pick something out for me? Well, you've got this whole huge stash to work with, but you might also have some things in your head that maybe you've finished that you don't have anymore. Give them some suggestions of things that they might want to pick up themselves. So you could say like, oh, you know what? I know you like woody whiskeys. I personally don't have any of the Woodford Double Oak anymore, but I bet you'd love it. And it's only like $40, $45 max. If you want to, check it out. Go here, the local place that might have it. I know that they've got a good deal on it, so go check it out. So that's a good way to do it. Give them something, and even on their way out, if they seemed interested, remind them of what that was, because I guarantee they forgot. All right, maybe the last point I'm going to make here. I like to, maybe like 2 or 3 in, when their palate's a little bit warmed up, I like to do something noteworthy for one of a couple reasons. It could be anything. You could say, oh, you know what, guys? I've got this Old Pulteney 18. This is kind of an expensive scotch, but honestly, I love it. I just want to share it with you guys. Do you want to try it? They're going to be like, yeah. Who's going to say no to that? Unless maybe they really just don't like scotch, in which case, give that guy some Bookers. So, on a side note, try to avoid the Bookers. 120 proof or so, that's going to get sloppy real quick. Anyway, so when you're going with something like this and you say, okay, you can see this bottle's pretty empty. I've shared this with a lot of people. Pour it around for everybody, make a big deal out of it. Make it feel exciting. Make them know that this is a special whiskey, but don't be trashy about it. Don't say, oh, well, this is a $150 bottle, and I only share this with people, like every now and then, because it's really expensive. I don't even really like to. Don't make them feel bad that they're drinking your expensive whiskey. Make them feel excited that they're going to drink something that they probably wouldn't buy for themselves. That's the way to do it. So you've poured the 18 now. Make it their game. Ask them, hey, all right, so you guys have already had a couple of whiskeys here. We've gone over some like nosing and tasting. I'm going to let you guys do this one blind. And after a minute or two, I'll give you guys some of my personal nosing notes. But I'm curious if you've been able to pick anything up here. Like, that's the way I phrase it. Not great, feel the room out a little bit, but that's the idea. Try to make it a game for them. They've already tasted a little bit. They're becoming whiskey masters. And now let them taste this really, really good thing. So they're going to taste this. Immediately, they're going to think it's amazing because you've already led up with so much excitement. And frankly, it's amazing. So, they sip it. Wow, that's really good. And you say, okay, now that you think that's really good, you've had the first taste, try it again and tell me if you get anything out of there. And I bet that they're going to come up with the weirdest stuff, and it's going to be awesome for you as a whiskey enthusiast. And frankly, you might start tasting it yourself. So there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen when you drink with other people. A lot of us are probably drinking on our own. Maybe our significant others drink wine or beer or whatever, and we really like whiskey. A lot of us are in that situation where our spouses or significant others aren't drinking whiskey along with us. But in this case, you've found a group of people who can, and you might make a couple friends out of this whole situation. Maybe they start drinking whiskey and have you over to try some stuff that you've never tried. This has endless limits. So, lastly, make sure everybody gets home safe. I shouldn't have to say so, but you're hosting people at your house. You are getting them drunk. You gave them some water. Don't really let them leave if they're really drank too much. Maybe their spouse heads home. If somebody starts getting a little too tipsy, either cut them off or maybe go talk to their significant other and say like, hey, just so you know, George is drinking a little bit too much. I'm not sure if you're, already drinking too much wine or whatever, but one of you is probably gonna have to drive home. Probably shouldn't be him. That's totally happens. It's absolutely forgivable. You don't know, maybe that dude skipped lunch, or maybe that dude didn't have breakfast or lunch. Don't make it a big deal, but cut him off. And make it fun for everybody. So anyway, that does it for this episode of the Whiskey Dictionary. I hope you learned something. I hope this whole little casual conversation, this isn't meant to be a official whiskey tasting with different food pairings and crackers and everything, but this is just meant to be spur of the moment. You've got some people over, you wanted to introduce them to a hobby that you enjoy, and like any other hobby that you enjoy, if you speak about it with passion, they're going to have a good time. So thank you very much for joining me here on the Whiskey Dictionary. I hope you have a great rest of your night, and I hope your parties are awesome. Cheers.